Success in real estate isn't built on transactions. It's built on trust. Behind every home sold is a family, a dream, a risk, and a relationship that matters. Today's guest has spent years proving that the strongest businesses aren't built on closing deals, but on opening doors for people. This is a conversation about leadership, reputation, resilience, and why trust remains the most valuable currency in business. Welcome to the Inner Edge podcast with Bruce Parker. Welcome back to the Inner Edge podcast, where we go beyond careers, accomplishments to uncover the character, values, and the life experiences that shape exceptional people. Today's guest is Bruce Parker, broker, owner of Best Realty in Highland Park, New Jersey. For nearly 5 decades, Bruce has helped families navigate one of life's biggest decisions while building a reputation for trust, integrity, and long-term relationships. Today's conversation isn't just about real estate. It's about trust, leadership, negotiation, resilience, reputation, and timeless principles that help people build meaningful careers and meaningful lives. Bruce, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really a pleasure to have you. I'm very excited about this episode. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and how you got into this incredible...
Well, Jeff, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me this morning. I really appreciate it. I want to make a correction, though. It's not 5 decades. I'm not quite that old. Probably about 35 years I've been doing this. So 3.5 decades. And it's been a very, very fruitful and rewarding, I want to say, career. And I really enjoyed it a lot. What got me into this originally was I started buying my first house in 1978. Wow. And I bought a bank-owned property that I got a very good deal on. I was having a meeting with a bunch of neighbors, and the neighbors said, "Hey, did you hear that house down the street sold for $30,000? That's what a house sold for in 1978. And they said, "Some lucky guy got it." And like, I was so proud that it was me they were talking about. This is when I'm a kid. These are my older neighbors, talking about what I had accomplished. What made me get my real estate license eventually, though, was I got cheated on a deal by a real estate broker, who I won't mention his name. Okay. He's still around. Wow. And I said, I'm never going to let this happen to me again. And so I went ahead and I got my real estate license and got started listing and buying, helping people buy real estate.
Wow. That's incredible. Let's unpack that a little bit. A lot of people don't really have knowledge when it comes to buying homes. A lot of people, I have friends that rent apartments and they feel like buying a home could be a scary life decision. Maybe you could share a little bit about how you would have them educate themselves, or how you deal with first-time home buyers.
So first-time home buyers are really tricky. It's a very emotional experience, and many times people feel the deck is stacked against them. Prices have gone way up, interest rates have gone way up. But over the last 30 years, if you own real estate, it really has appreciated, in some cases, much better than equities. Wow. And so it is a really good investment. Plus, you've got to live somewhere. Statistics show that the sooner you buy your first house, the more wealth you'll achieve in your lifetime, and that people who own their own homes, their children typically go higher in education. So there are some really good benefits to owning a home. First-time home buyers, though, have a really tough time because it seems like a daunting task. And it is a process. And that process many times scares people away. So you asked what we do to educate people. We really educate them first on the process. Wow. And then if you listen carefully to what people are telling you, they'll tell you exactly what they're looking for and what they want. And it's a part of my experience that I can kind of point them in the right direction to the right community and tell them what I think is the right price and what they should be paying for a house.
Wow. Bruce, when it comes to reputation and trust, why do some people earn trust while some others struggle? Like some brokers, you mentioned somebody, you got cheated at a deal, or something happened to you in the past with a broker that's still practicing. I guess the question really comes down to, how do you build long-lasting trust? Because it's not just about the transaction. You want to build a name, a reputation. Can you give any advice anyone who's getting into the field of real estate, an agent or a broker, in terms of honesty, trust, building it, and how to maintain it?
First of all, listen carefully to your client. Make sure you understand exactly what they're looking for, what they want. And then really important is to do the right thing. Doing the right thing, if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. And that's important. Now, how do you learn how to do the right thing? Wow. In my case, I really learned it from Boy Scouts. And I remember, back when I was in Troop 19 in New Brunswick, trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. If you apply all those things, then you're really going to be doing the right thing for people.
Wow. And that goes a long way, I guess. And then that reputation, it's something that you naturally just build, and I find that, when you're honest and anything, when you're looking out for other people, it does come back to you. That might not come back from that person, but it definitely comes back some way, somehow. Can somebody rebuild, do you find, from your experience, can somebody rebuild trust once it's broken? Or do you find it's very difficult from experience?
I think the bad feelings from broken trust last a very long time, and they're always in the back of somebody's mind. So individually, it's hard to rebuild trust once you've broken it with a person. If you're talking about building it community-wise, then it's just a matter of doing the right thing. And it's a matter of sometimes giving long before you get back. And I do a lot of participation in community events and within the community. One of the most rewarding experiences I had is in my house of worship in New Brunswick. Mm-hmm. During the winter, every house of worship in New Brunswick takes a week where they house homeless people. Wow. And at night, and the homeless people would come in the middle of the winter, and we would have to sit in there to make sure that nobody, had a problem. Wow. And talking to people who were, I'm not even going to say homeless, I'm going to say unhoused to be politically correct here, but speaking to those people who were unhoused, who really appreciated coming into the warm church, made me understand some things about how important housing is.
Yes. Bruce, when it comes to dealing with, I guess, when it comes to, I have a couple of questions regarding negotiations. When a seller or a buyer is interested in a property, and let's just say they want to negotiate, are there things that you personally advise your clients, like there's specific things to say or do in order to do it in the right way or the wrong way? Is there a right way or wrong way to negotiate?
That's a really good question, and it really depends on the market conditions at the time. If it's a seller's market and sellers are in control, you have to really understand if your buyers truly want the house. Mm-hmm. And if they truly want the house, sometimes they're going to have to pay a little bit more than they really would like to pay. But in a seller's market, when prices are going up, he who hesitates is lost, because as prices go up, it gets worse, it doesn't get better. Sometimes it's a buyer's market though. Sometimes prices are dropping. And then again, the strategy is completely different in a buyer's market. That's where experience comes in, because I know whether it's a seller's market or whether it's a buyer's market. And I know what strategy works best for achieving your goals in either situation.
And how does one actually become more proficient in that area of seller's market or buyer's market? Because I remember when I was buying my second home, I was this close to saying, you know what, it's just too expensive. And my wife was like, yeah, we can't afford, this is beyond our expenses. And I remember looking at my wife saying, we can't afford not to. The prices are just gonna keep going. It was just my gut feeling. Now, I don't know if there's a specific way of looking at the market and saying, yeah, that's a buyer's market or a seller's market, depending on who is calling you, depending on how many homes are for sale. Is there a way to tell?
It reminds me of the old joke. Somebody stopped me on the street and said, how do you get to Yankee Stadium? And I said, practice, practice, practice. Wow. So that's really what we have to do. We have to practice, practice, practice. Being in the situation and coming upon a different set of statistics and events gives you an opportunity to recognize what's going on. I recognize that now we may be acting as if we were in 2007. 2007 is the last time we had a crash. And we may be sitting right at the top of the market now, as we were in 2007, and then all of a sudden the crash starts. And the funny thing about a crash is when the prices go down, they go down very quickly. They come up slowly over a number of years, but they come down very quickly. Wow. But if you're buying a house for the first time and you're going to worry about timing it exactly perfect, it's very difficult because the market is gigantic and it's like a huge ship. It doesn't turn quickly, it doesn't stop quickly, it doesn't start quickly, but it still goes wherever it wants to go.
Bruce, as a real estate broker of 35 years, and you corrected me, I appreciate that. Can you bring up some stories that perhaps were challenging? It could be a client or a seller or a buyer that you've helped in a particular situation, or perhaps things that didn't go as planned and you had to figure out ways to solve the problems.
So one of the things is I specialize in selling homes. I have far more listings, far more people selling their homes than people buying their homes. And even today, here in Highland Park, I have a home that somebody bought from me 5-6 years ago, and they're selling now. But They had rented the home for a number of years. And so now they're getting ready to put it on the market. We listed it today, as a matter of fact.
Oh, wow.
But it's full of junk. And it's full of junk because the tenants just left everything there. So part of what I did for this particular seller was I got dumpsters. I arranged for people to come and load the dumpsters. I arranged for a person to come and clean the house. The stove and the refrigerator were horrible, but I arranged for somebody to come in and make them spotless. And so now the house is much easier to sell, and it's going to sell for a much higher price.
That's amazing. That's a great. And where does perhaps somebody's watching this and saying, I am just getting into the real estate world. I don't know which, brokerage to join, whether they're living in New Jersey or living in somewhere in Highland Park, and they are trying to gain the skills that you have, the years of experience, and obviously your name. But where would you say these people, these new agents, how should they learn and position themselves in this new world of real estate? Because as you know, this whole world of real estate has changed dramatically in the last 35 years. With AI, which I want to get to with you, how AI has changed the social, the social world has changed with Facebook and Instagram. How does somebody position themselves in a way to set them up for success?
When you're a brand new agent and you've spent your 75 hours getting licensed, and as you know, I have a school where I get people licensed. When people first get licensed, it's kind of like reading the rules of how to play golf. So you can read that rule book and you can know the rules as well as anybody knows the rules. But the second you get out there and hit your first ball, you have no idea what you're doing. So how does a new person do to get that information? Well, you could certainly get a mentor and work with the mentor directly. But real estate agents are weird. They're all type A personalities. And many times they're not willing to share the real secrets of what they do to get business because now you're going to be a competitor to them. Wow. So it's very, very, very difficult for a new person to get that information. One of the things we strive to do at our school is, besides teaching people how to pass their state exam, that 75-hour class, is we have career enhancement classes where we talk about the things that nobody ever tells you about, like how to get involved in tax lien sales and help people who are behind in their real estate taxes, or how to work with banks for foreclosures, or how to keep people from getting their house foreclosed and how to stop and save their house and what they might be able to do. So we offer all that as part of our career enhancement courses, but you can also just learn it by the same way I learned it, which is to little by little expand what you do, get good at it, and then move on to the next thing and expand. And sometimes that just takes time and people don't have the patience to do that.
Wow, you mentioned you have a school. It's part of your brokerage.
So the school is separate from my brokerage, and I've got a really good story about my school. When I was in high school, my guidance counselor, her name was Miss Gorka. I went to New Brunswick High School, and as a junior in high school, I went to her and I said, what should I do? I'm going to graduate next year. And she says, well, you should go to college. I said, that's great, but I'm going to go to college. What do you think I should major in? She says, what do you want to major in? I said, I'd like to be a teacher. What she said to me, and this is back in 1970, teaching is for women. You don't want to be a teacher, you want to be an engineer. So I listened to her and I majored in engineering, got a degree in engineering, but I didn't like it. And I really liked real estate much better. So the funny story is I really got into this because my guidance counselor in high school gave me bad advice. And I really love teaching. And all these years, that's stuck in the back of my mind that I really love teaching. So one day I said the best way to become a teacher is just start my own school. And I do the teaching more as a hobby. I really like it. Many people sit home at night and watch TV. I like sitting at home at night and giving classes on the school. And people really appreciate it. So
I appreciate you. You've helped me many times, many phone calls. You've picked up phone calls at all hours of the day for me. So I have tremendous gratitude towards you, Bruce. To do that, to give of yourself like you do, is really showing of your character, the fact that you love teaching and you've created this for yourself in the real estate world is really fantastic. Can you talk a little bit about, people focus a lot about their strengths and weaknesses, and a lot of times we try to focus on our strengths. Can you maybe tell a story of something that, or maybe a deal that you never forgot, or some kind of a real estate transaction that you never forgot? Perhaps it was memorable.
There are so many of them that are at top of my mind, but there was a house in Highland Park, another rental property that somebody had owned for years, and the tenants were horrible. By the way, sometimes tenants can be horrible, and she needed to sell it. But in my conversation with her, she kept telling me that she was a little bit older than I am, people were talking with her, and she kept saying people weren't treating her with respect. And I said, well, I'm sorry to hear that, let me know whatever I can do for you, I can do. Then she started to talk about when she was working at the Cold Spring Project. Now, just the night before, there had been a question on Jeopardy about Watson and Crick and the Cold Spring Project. And so it all put together, not because I'm that smart, just because I watched Jeopardy and I remembered it. And I said, did you work on the Cold Spring Project? She said, yeah, she was a scientist and she worked on it. And I said, did you meet Dr. Watson and Dr. Crick? She says, yeah. And then eventually I got to see her house where she lived, because this was a rental, and she showed me pictures of her work in there. So that was really a rewarding experience that, you're kind of meeting somebody famous. Wow. But you run into that kind of people all the time.
It's amazing. How do people usually find you, Bruce? Is it through word of mouth, advertising?
So what works best is word of mouth, personal referral, prior customers. You'd be surprised how many people, especially in this central New Jersey area, play musical houses. They buy a house that's small, then they buy a house a couple years later that's a little bit bigger, then they buy a house a couple years later that's really big, then a couple years later they retire and buy a little tiny house in somewhere that they can get a ranch where they again can retire and have less taxes.
Wow. And I'll put it in the show notes that, the name of your realty and also the school, and also perhaps I'll put in you work in Highland Park.
All of Central Jersey.
Okay.
We sell houses as far up as Edgewater and as far south as we've had stuff all the way down in right outside of Cape May, New Jersey. So we cover the entire state. Our sweet spot is the Central New Jersey area.
Okay.
It's all kinds of property, single-family homes, multifamily homes. I've got 14 acres for sale in South Brunswick. Anything you could think of that you might want, I've got. But again, my specialty is getting it sold for you. And I get it sold by using a combination of social media, pay-per-click advertising on Google, and I've been really working hard to build up my AI presence.
Wow.
And it's amazing when you type in information like who is the best real estate agent in Highland Park, without me doing anything, it would suggest me. Wow. And then I understood that I needed to continue publishing blogs or publishing books or publishing papers that would give me more and more credibility as far as AI is concerned.
That's amazing. That brings me to my next question regarding AI. The world is ever changing. How do you feel, where is the real estate world going and moving towards with AI? Everything is infinitely easier today with AI, with listings, I'm sure, and other things. How do you see it?
There's changes that are going to happen with AI. We've got these three big 500-pound gorillas in the room with Zillow, Realtor.com, and Homes.com. I think AI is going to take away some of their presence. Remember, they're not real estate brokerages. They're just marketing platforms. What they do is they advertise a picture of your home, right, and they try to get leads, and then they sell the leads to agents. Agents pay a fortune for those leads. I don't, because I don't believe those leads are of any real value, and they're very low probability leads. But AI is going to make it completely different now. In a few more years, people are going to depend on AI. I think they said Google searches were down 20%. This last time period, I'm not sure what it was, but it's going to go down further and further because people are getting better answers from AI without advertising.
Right, ChatGPT, Anthropic, Claude, and people are utilizing it more and more than Google nowadays. You know, somebody watching this, again, a real estate agent, even a broker, and they say, you know what, hadn't had any luck. I've heard of people getting into real estate for years, not doing a single sale. What has worked for you when you started out that you can advise them?
A lot of real estate agents get into this and they forget that it's a 4-letter word, work, W-O-R-K, and they don't like to do the work. It's also very difficult because if you allow it, other people will use up all your time.
Yes.
You have to be very good at making sure you manage your time. Time is more important than money in many cases.
Yes, wow.
And you gotta like it, right? If you don't like doing it and it's hard work and you have to put a lot of hours into it, you're gonna really feel the pain. But if you like it, it's not so bad. And you get, every day is something different. Every day is somebody new or something new or some new problem. With listings, you know, people always have problems. If they forgot to pull a permit to finish their basement, and I want to say forgot in quotes, you know, now I've got to solve that problem. I've got to get architectural drawings, I've got to pull the permits, I've got to help the people get it all legal. Or in some cases, we have to remove everything in the basement and tear it out because they didn't pull permits.
Wow.
And giving people the correct advice about how they should move forward with selling their house and what they should do and what they should be keeping an eye on, is very, very important.
Bruce, have you ever had a house or a client that you turned down and said, you know what, you should use somebody else and take this listing?
So in my case, the bad news is no.
Wow.
You know, I work with my wife, and my wife is the brains of the operation. She's very smart. My wife tells me that we need to evaluate more about how much time somebody is going to take rather than how much their commission is going to be, because we have hit a lot of really bad time wasters in the 35 years.
Wow.
People who aren't listening to our advice, people who have, you know, one of the things they say, you should never lie to your doctor, you should never lie to your attorney,
right,
and you should never lie to your real estate agent.
Wow.
Because things that you mislead us on make it really hard to solve problems later on, like the finished basement not having permits.
That's very powerful. It's very true, by the way. I think honesty is the best policy in all areas of life. How many people work for you as agents?
So I have about 30 agents.
Wow.
And I have a couple of people who are instructors in my school that sometimes they sub for me and sometimes they'll run a class on their own. New Jersey requires continuing education for real estate agents. And so every 2 years, a real estate agent has to take 12 hours of continuing education. Our school also offers that. And the people who work for me in my school are able to teach that continuing education also.
That's fantastic. So if somebody's considering, or agents are watching this and they're saying, I've been working for a real estate firm and I would like to see what, you know, Best Realty is offering. What are your packages for real estate agents and realtors or brokers perhaps, in terms of continuing education, monthly fees, perhaps maybe even having some kind of an office in Highland Park?
The thing I can tell you that when people are considering an office is many times agents, when you're thinking about where they should work, are looking at the wrong things. 90% of a real estate agent's time is spent generating leads. And if people don't understand that, then they're in for a hard time. You're always trying to generate leads. The generating leads is difficult, and
right,
1 million people will sell you stuff that's extremely expensive that really doesn't work so well. And people get sucked on that, get hooked on that, because it's really easy. It takes really none of your work to try to get that business. You just write a check.
Yeah.
But they're horrible leads. Really generating leads is very, very difficult. So the question is, when somebody comes to me and they want to work for me, we tell them that here's what we're going to do. First of all, I'm going to give you all the advice. I will tell you everything that works and everything that doesn't. I'm not afraid of you stealing my business. I'll give you all the information you need to move forward. The next thing is, and it's very important, if you have a really big office, who do you talk to when you have a problem? Who do you call when at 11 o'clock at night something happened? Well, the whole benefit of working for us is that we answer all our phone calls.
Wow.
If my wife is available and you call her, you get to talk to her right then and there, or you can call me and talk to me anytime you want. And I've got to Couple of really funny stories. I had a client in Old Bridge, very, very intense person. And I told him, listen, your house is going on the market, but I'm going on vacation. I'll be glad to put it on the market, but I'll be gone for a week. And I was in Italy. So in Italy, my wife and I go to the Vatican.
Wow.
And we're in the Sistine Chapel. And my wife says to me, turn your phone off, because that's what they say, the rules. Well, all of a sudden my phone starts to ring in my pocket. So quickly I reach in my pocket, I shut it off. I don't take the call, I shut it off. But my wife takes my phone away from me. Oh. Now, she puts it in her purse. Then we're coming out of the Sistine Chapel, out of the Vatican, into the streets in Italy. She says, give me your wallet, because this is where they all pickpocket people. Oh. So I hand her my wallet. So now I have no cell phone and no wallet. And we get on one of those tour buses that goes around, you hop on and hop off. So at one point, my wife and my kids hopped off the tour bus. And I said, I'm not going with you guys, I'm tired, I'm staying on. And I was under the assumption I knew where we were staying. So the tour bus takes off with me on it, and them gone.
Oh my goodness.
But I have no wallet, no cell phone, and I don't know where we really are staying. So I walked around Rome for 6 hours, lost, without able to communicate. What I finally did was I went into a little cafe, and it was an Indian guy who was the owner of the cafe, and he understood English very well, thank goodness. And I talked him into letting me use his computers for free. And Italian keyboards are different, so I had to figure out how to use an Italian keyboard. And I was able to then go through all the hotels, and I recognized the desk clerk at the hotel we checked in on. That's the only thing I knew. And luckily, she had been from New Jersey, so I remembered her, so I recognized her, and I got the address of the hotel, and then finally got back to the hotel. My wife was ready to call the Italian police department and send them out to search for me, because 6 hours missing with no wallet, no cell phone, she was nervous. Now, the connection of that story to real estate is the phone call that came in was from my seller in Old Bridge. And because they didn't answer that phone, he wanted to cancel the listing. He was angry at me for not answering the phone. And I said, I didn't answer the phone because I was in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. So again, one of the benefits of working with us is that we do answer our phone all the time, except in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican.
Wow, what a story. That's unbelievable, unbelievable. Do you feel that in your best realty, you have a chance to really work with the agents? I mean, I'm sure you mentor them, like you said, you have the continuing education courses, and you give them all your knowledge. Why aren't you threatened by the competition? Because sometimes there are people in the real estate world that are very threatened. They feel, I've met some people personally that feel like, you're gonna take my business, I would like for you to work somewhere else. In your practice or in your brokerage, how do you maintain that, collaboration and giving of information and mentoring your staff, and them working together and not feeling that, I guess.
So you're hitting on a couple of things here. The very first thing is I tell people, when you join a real estate office, everybody in the office is your competitor in your own office.
Wow.
Because you're all swimming in the same pond looking for the same fish. So everybody is a competitor. So never talk to anybody and give them any of your information, because all your information is secret and valuable. Wow. So if you were to leak out that I know Mr. Jones is going to sell his house, if somebody hears that, they're going to go around behind your back and go straight to Mr. Jones. There's no way that you can protect yourself. So just consider that everybody in your office is your competitor, and you don't want to trust them. And I know that sounds sad, but that's the way it is.
Wow.
So again, in my office, we tell people when they come in, and everybody in the office is your competitor, but we will be willing to talk to you at any time. So if you need advice, come to us first. And that's why answering the phone all the time is so important, because we want them to come to us first and ask us. Okay. The other thing is the people who are in the industry, they come and go. 80% of real estate agents fail. 80% of real estate agents fail. The National Association of Realtors has lost a couple 100,000 members this year because the market is slowing down. When you realize that 80% of people are going to fail, you've got to recognize what's going to cause somebody to fail. And that's they're not achieving what their goals are. So you've got to figure out how you can get them to get to what their goals are. And so one of the things we do is I have many, many listings. I get a lot of bank-owned listings. I work with the big banks when they foreclose on a property. They'll give me the homes to sell, but those homes are vacant. And those homes, the banks, the people who manage the bank's REOs are in Texas.
Oh, wow.
So what happens is the younger agents in my office that are new, that are starting out, they can do open houses in my bank-owned properties. And there's no way they can make a mistake because there's nobody there, right? Nobody knows exactly what they're doing. The banks in Texas don't know exactly what they're doing.
Wow.
And if they get there late, there's nobody going to yell at them. Sometimes a younger agent will do an open house with a seller in the house and they'll say the wrong thing to the seller.
Right.
And then you've got to repair the damage they did. You don't have to worry about that with bank-owned properties.
That's incredible.
And it works out really well. And people who are new, doing open houses gets them the opportunity to talk to people.
Yes.
And we've had recently an agent, a brand new agent, first deal was doing an open house at a bank-owned property in East Brunswick. And so, it's again a benefit to people.
That's incredible. So what I'm hearing, what I'm hearing you say is that in your brokerage you already have this system, which is a powerful system, the bank-owned properties that you already have somehow, maybe relationships or maybe you were able to get them, and you don't have to have the agents generating leads as much.
Right. That's the hardest part, is generating leads. So we have an ability to give you leads that we have generated. We also have, first of all, we have a website that I want to plug.
Yes.
It's highlandparknewjersey.com.
I'll put that in the show notes.
You can't get easier than that.
Yes.
highlandparknewjersey.com. We have a YouTube channel, Living in Highland Park, NJ.
Fantastic. I'll put that in the show notes as well.
So we post a lot of things in those places. We also run webinars for first-time buyers and webinars for sellers. We have they can do it live, where I'm hosting it live, or they can watch the replays. And we have a system out there where we'll run a Facebook ad for a webinar, and maybe we'll get 40 people to sign up for that webinar.
Wow.
Now that's too many people for me to work. Yeah. So those 40 people all go to my agents. And again, they're not high probability leads, but they're free. So, there's high probability leads that are very, very expensive. There's low probability leads that cost you something. And then there's free leads that are low probability. And better than paying for them is to have them for free, especially since keeping in touch with people nowadays is so inexpensive.
Yeah.
Right? It's a matter of just setting them up on emails or drips or, texting. Very inexpensive compared to the old days.
Even sending a card, some kind of like introducing yourself, a card if somebody moves in or buys a house. There are systems for that as well, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So both Barack Obama and George W. Bush have, in the books that I've read about them, have talked about sending handwritten personal notes. Bush used to send out 5 personal handwritten notes a day, every day. And those are very powerful. Not buying them through a system that sends them out, but everybody you meet that you have a face-to-face conversation with, a vendor, a potential seller, or for sale by owner, after the meeting you should send them a handwritten personal note. And that kind of differentiates you from everybody else.
Wow.
So we have a system for doing that. We publish little note cards so that you can grab them. Anything that real estate agents have to think about doesn't get done. If it's done for them and ready for them, then they're able to just grab it and move quickly.
It's incredible. That is phenomenal. I'm getting so much value from this conversation because these are things I'd never even thought of as an agent myself. And I don't know if you know this about me, Bruce, but I've gotten my New York real estate license 18 years ago. And then life happened. I went to graduate school. I did a few things in New York, and then thank God I kept renewing my license. But I never had a mentor. I never had any of the things that you're describing. It's absolutely needed, and I think a person who doesn't have this information, I don't even know how they would generate leads without any mentorship or the kind of things that you're talking about. And then obviously I got married and had kids, and then moved to New Jersey and reestablished myself as a real estate agent. But I love everything you're saying. And one thing that came to mind in terms of human nature, when we talk about the human condition, what have thousands of transactions, because I know you've sold many homes, or hundreds of transactions, taught you about human nature, if anything?
everybody has their own best interest at heart.
Wow.
And they can sense when you're being honest with them. So you need to be honest, you need to be truthful, and you need to care more about them than you care about your commission. That's difficult sometimes because money's important. Paying your mortgage is important. Yes. But people can sense when you're stressed and when the person on the other side of the table from them is really stressed about the money, about getting paid for what they're doing, instead of being stressed about representing the person they're supposed to be representing.
So having the client's best interest at heart is more important than obviously making the deal. Have you had deals that you said, you know what, I need you to pull out because something just doesn't feel or smell right?
So I've had deals where I've had to fire my client because maybe sometimes, we've got clients who aren't obeying fair housing rules.
Right.
And so we've got to say, listen, can't work together because, if you're insisting on what you're doing, it's illegal, right?
Right.
But we've also had times when we have given up some of our commission, or sometimes all of our commission, in order to get somebody exactly what they need to get, just because it's the right thing to do.
Wow.
New Jersey, a couple years ago, started the opportunity to have buyer rebates. And so this was before that recent decision with the big lawsuit when you negotiate commissions for buyer side commission in the very beginning. But when we are still having the seller tell what the buyer side commission should be, New Jersey started allowing buyer rebates. And there were times when we had to give buyer rebates to people so that they could close, so that they would have enough money to have their deal close.
Wow. If you can imagine for just a second, just at the beginning, anyone at the beginning of their career, whether it comes to real estate or buying, flipping, constructing and selling, remodeling homes, if you could give them one piece of advice, one lesson from, that they could take on with them and say, you know what, this can change my entire positioning and trajectory of my career, what would that be?
A good database. The one regret I have is from the very beginning that I didn't keep a very good database. I tried to keep everything inside my head, and it works to a point, but then it doesn't work. And it certainly doesn't work now at my age. I wished I'd kept a very good database. And there's a lot of them out there. You can just do it as simply as an Excel spreadsheet if you're good at Excel spreadsheets. But you gotta be at the tip of your mind what people need so that if an opportunity arises, if a window opens, you can quickly reach into that window and get that person what they need.
Wow. And then, I appreciate that. One thing we discussed, and I just want to bring us back here because it's the future of the world, artificial intelligence. I seen a video last week where they said it's scary that in the next 4 to 6 years, they're predicting that AI is going to take over 99% of jobs. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. Do you feel that it might be true for the real estate world?
Well, what I noticed over the last few years is that many younger people especially don't value my knowledge. They'd rather look something up on Google and take that as the gospel truth.
Wow.
When sometimes Google is not giving them the right information. Sometimes people go on Zillow, look at the value of their home.
Yeah.
If you go down the bottom of the page on Zillow, it says their information for the value of your home is plus or minus 15%.
Right.
So do you want to sell your home with a plus or minus 15% error? The knowledge, the information, being involved in the local communities, being hands-on all the time gives you much more ability to give correct information and correct advice. Are they ever going to get so well constructed that AI can do that? Probably. I feel I'm at the end. So if 10 years from now that happens, I'm okay with that.
Right.
But if I was brand new, I would be really worried about that.
Yeah.
If I wanted to have a 20-year real estate career and I was just starting now, I would be really worried about that because it's going to be very easy for people to get a lot of information that they really only can get from me now, but they'll be able to get it from AI.
The perfect example, just to dovetail of what you just said, for me, when I was selling my first house, my real estate agent told me, sell it for X amount, and we were gonna do it. We were just listening to the advice, and a family member, a very close family member said, 1 second, before you do that, why don't you position yourself over $100,000 more? And we said, why would we? Because the advice is you can always bring the price down. You can never bring it back up. So position yourself high. Now, I don't know, that advice actually served us perfectly because we got the full price, and it was mind-blowing that we were going to lose that 100,000. I think, just to go back to the AI, I think that AI is not going to replace all the jobs. I think it's just going to replace the people that don't utilize it enough. Maybe, no, I think the advice is for myself and then anyone else starting out is get involved and learn AI. So you can, I guess, obviously take the information from someone who's had more life experience than you, but also do both.
So the other thing is learn how to use AI. So AI is talking about you. That is, people aren't realizing that. And that takes work too. That takes, publishing blogs and publishing, things that are on the internet that the AI can crawl and find, because they're not going to find it unless you put it somewhere.
Wow.
And then it gives them the opportunity to recognize you through what you've done in your efforts.
That's amazing. And if someone is publishing, where would you publish these things?
So there's a real estate community called Active Rain. You should be on Active Rain, and they have a blog community. You should be on Facebook, publishing on Facebook, and on Instagram and on Twitter, depending on what your community is in terms of who lives there. Maybe you're going to be on other websites, whether they're Blue Sky or Truth Social. You're going to as many places as you can be that are on the internet, that are print, that are on the internet, so that the AI can crawl it and find it and can move forward.
Wow.
And YouTube is great too. Don't be shy about doing videos.
Yeah, YouTube is very powerful. A lot of really valuable stuff. In closing, I just want to ask you this final question. When it comes to the world economy, and the economy obviously of the United States, do you feel that real estate agents and brokers need to position themselves differently according to what's going on in the world, whether it's a war, whether it's what's happening with technology, what's happening with the economy? Does that mean one would position or should be doing other things in order to be more successful in the world of real estate?
Somebody told me a long time ago, this is 30 years ago, that if you want to maintain your lifestyle in real estate, have more than one stream of income. So if you're a real estate agent, don't just depend on your listing and selling revenue. Get yourself some rental properties and manage some rental properties. Build a couple houses, maybe flip a couple houses, maybe have a school, anything that will give you extra streams of income.
Wow.
Because when things dry up, something else might pick up. Wow. And so it gives you an opportunity not to starve during the lean times.
That's a great, I love that. I'm going to coin that. When things dry up, something else
picks up.
Wow, love that. Thank you so much, Bruce, for coming out for the podcast.
I've got one more great story to tell you, if you've got a minute.
Yes, absolutely.
This neighborhood that you live in.
Oh, yeah?
There was a woman in Highland Park. She was very old, and she used to not have a driver's license, and she would walk around. She would have a shawl on, and sometimes she'd be pushing a shopping cart. But she had a really nice house. And she was always, I'd see her and I'd pick her up, and I'd put her, sometimes if she had the shopping cart, I'd put the shopping cart in my pickup truck, and I'd drive her home, right? Just to be nice to her and always have conversations with her. And, I'm asking her, someday, are you going to sell your house? And she goes, well, it's my brother's house. And so, I says, great, well, if he's ever going to sell it, please let me know. And she said, yeah. And I said, just a normal conversation, what did you and your brother do for a living when you were younger? And she says, well, I did this, and I had a secretary, but my brother used to work on the Manhattan Project. And I said, what? And she says, yeah, I used to work on the Manhattan Project. I said, in Princeton or out in the West? She says, no, in Princeton. And now I'm getting to joke with her. And I'm saying, oh, did you ever visit him? Because it's supposed to be secret. She says, yeah, I used to go down there to Princeton and visit. I said, did you ever meet Albert Einstein? I'm just joking with her now, right? Just, pleasant conversation. She says, as a matter of fact, I used to date him.
No way. Wow.
Her explanation was that Albert Einstein wasn't allowed in the library at Princeton because he was Jewish.
Wow.
And he would take the train up to New Brunswick, and he would worship at a house of worship on Livingston Avenue, and then he would date girls from this neighborhood. And she was one of the girls he dated. Now, I didn't believe her a bit.
Right.
Until the movie came out about Einstein and talked about how he had many girlfriends. And so I said, maybe she was telling me the truth.
Yeah.
But
That's fabulous. Wow, that's fantastic. That's incredible. Bruce, thank you so much. After spending nearly 35 years helping people buy and sell homes, I guess the real question is, what have you learned about the real estate market and the world that has, I guess, what about people and real estate that you applied to your own personal life? Again, when you were coming out as an engineer, you loved teaching, but there was experience you didn't have. After gaining all this experience, how do you apply it to your own personal life?
The best way I can answer that is you've got to understand that there's always change. Familiar feels better. So people really don't like change so much, but there always is going to be change, and you can't stop it. Whether it's AI, there's always going to be change. So you've got to learn how to be light on your feet and be able to adapt to the change and work with the change. And the market is changing now, and the way we do business is changing now. And if people want to continue, they can't become obsolete. They have got to make that change.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Bruce. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate the time.